Hi Kresge, it's Provost Ben here, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about Tea and Cookies tomorrow, and I'm excited because it's the first time our Tea and Cookies has been connected to the Deep Read, and you've been seeing from some emails going around that we're really excited to get the Deep Read going at Kresge. So for those of you who don't know, the Deep Read is the first time in a long while our campus has tried to come together as a whole intellectual community and read the same book. And it's Margaret Atwood's The Testaments. And in celebration of that, Atwood herself is gonna come give a lecture at the Quarry Amphitheater on April 5th. So if you haven't already seen that in your emails from me, please check it out. Please go to the Deep Read page and sign up to get a free book. And I think some of you will even get free tickets to the Atwood talk. So, but tomorrow at Tea and Cookies, which is at 4 p.m. as usual on Wednesdays, we're going to read the first few chapters of the Testaments. And I'm not going to try to interpret what I've read so far of the Testaments. Literature and fiction are not really my specialties, but I am really excited by it. And so I just want to tell you the questions that I have, some of the things that have been coming up for me as I've read the first few very short chapters of this book. So if you don't want spoilers, go ahead and pause the video now, and maybe you can come back and watch it later after you've read. Again, these chapters are really short. But we'll be reading at least 3. They're short enough that we can read 3 or 4, I think, tomorrow at Tea and Cookies. And so just to kind of get us in the mood, I thought I would let you know what I've been asking myself as I've read this really interesting fiction. So the first thing that occurs to me when we start to read this book is that it's structured really strangely. If you look at the table of contents, you see 27, what look like 27 chapters, but they're actually 27 sections. And then as you go into each section, you see that they're numbered with Roman numerals, and then within each section there are Arabic numerals that represent what are really the short chapters. But it's even more interesting to kind of note that it's not like there are chapters within chapters, because there are 2 different numbering systems that kind of run askew against one another. For example, the first section just has 1 chapter in it, and the second section begins with chapter 2 and has the 3rd and 4th as well, so that the 3rd section begins with chapter 5. So I just think that's a really interesting kind of, suggests 2 parallel streams of time going through it. And then the second thing you notice is that the narrators of these chapters aren't given names, and yet it's quite clear that they're characters. And we're led to think by the differences between the titles and how they're presented, that we're led to think that there are different narrators in each chapter, or that we're switching between narrators. But we're not really allowed to give them identities or to know really who they are. They talk about other characters in their narrations, but we have to infer something about who they are just by the context that they give us. And our first narrator is an aunt, and we're going to learn later that aunts are authority figures of a kind, but we start to feel like their power is kind of limited. And one of the first times we get that sense is right here on the very first page of the first chapter, just a couple of paragraphs down. She's talking about a statue that's been made in her honor, and so we get an idea right away that she's someone of importance and maybe someone to be feared. But her statue commemorates her too soon. She's nervous about the fact that she's still alive and she's already being commemorated. And she says, "My eyes in the statue are fixed on some cosmic point of reference, understood to represent my idealism, my unflinching commitment to duty, my determination to move forward despite all obstacles." And yet right away she says, "Not that anything in the sky would be visible to my statue, placed as it is, in a morose cluster of trees and shrubs beside the footpath running in front of Ardua Hall. So there's this tension right away between being celebrated in a statue and then having that statue in a place where nothing really would be visible and where the character couldn't survey anything that would symbolize her power. And we get shifts like that throughout the first few chapters, shifts that alarm us in the way the narrative's perspective kind of catches us off guard. On the next page, we learn that this whole commemoration by statue was 9 years ago, so we don't realize at first that she's talking about something that happened a long time ago. And the shift that we come to when we shift suddenly forward 9 years to the present is a time when this aunt seems much less cheered and much less empowered in her circumstances. In the second chapter, the anonymity of the narrator is even more stark by the title Transcript of Witness Testimony 369A. And so right away you have a feeling of someone imprisoned and someone whose sense of future or power is as null as you can imagine. But this character is talking about her childhood, about what it was like to grow up within Gilead. And at first you hear something almost a kind of predictable narrative of women being taught to fear men, something that is surely a kind of familiar concern or criticism within feminism, that again, a kind of shift. The narrator shifts very strongly and quickly away from that after we learn about girls being the custodians of an invaluable treasure that existed unseen inside us. We were precious flowers that had to be kept safely inside glass houses, reminding us of a world where femininity is kept on a pedestal and kept from its agency through its being protected. But she suddenly pivots and says that was the kind of thing runny-nosed Aunt Vidala would tell us at school while we were doing petite point embroidery for handkerchiefs and footstools and framed pictures. So immediately she ridicules that perspective by attributing it to a runny-nosed aunt that she didn't respect very much. And you think maybe she's going to be critical of that because another aunt, Aunt Estee, says there's no point in frightening girls this way. But as you'll see, that shift brings us to an even more frightening perspective that Aunt Estee develops. And so it's like this girl is trapped between almost incompatible kinds of authority, but that scare her in these really, really different ways. Well, I've talked for a long time, but you get the same kinds of shifts in the third chapter as a girl talks about her childhood and her admiration for a Tabitha who is at the same time dishonest, and yet she still feels a sense of respect, a sense that Tabitha was honest kind of unto herself. And it's certainly frightening to think about someone who has to look around at a world that gives her cause to tremble, gives her cause to be afraid, and even gives her cause toward admiration, but toward admiration of things that don't lend any promise. And when we finish quite near the end of this chapter, having a sense of a girl who is in the clutches of a mother who is at the same time confident and telling confident stories that lead her to beliefs that she can hold on to, while at the same time she feels the fear, the rapid heartbeat, and the boniness and the thinness of the mother figure that is one of her only comforts. I'm just really impressed so far by a book that is leading us constantly toward a kind of wonderment about the future, and at the same time a sense of fear about what will happen. So I'm excited about this, and if you've listened this far, I hope you have your own questions. Maybe my questions don't quite make sense to you, and you'd like to respond to this video with questions that are really different. And I'd love to hear what you think as you go through the book, and I look forward to talking to you about the book tomorrow at Tea and Cookies. All right? See you then.